All right, we're back for episode 88 of Digital Divination. Jason, what happened to Ron? Where's Ron?
I don't know. I mean, he just disappeared last week, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, he can never tell with that guy when he's going to be around or not. So, how you been?
I'm good.
Yeah.
Good. I've been pretty good.
Yeah.
Friday was the release of Pikmin 4, so I've been playing that a bunch.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I noticed that Paizo, your was he the president, made a big announcement, a bunch of stuff too. So,
Oh yeah.
uh,
Yeah, a lot of stuff about the future of what's going on, and I mean, I was also surprised to hear about those new books.
Yeah.
Or the new book.
Yeah.
Right, I didn't know about that until then, honestly. And cool that we're gonna get a new store and overhaul the website and everything. So yeah,
good stuff. Yeah, it some of those things that we'd heard about or rumors about, but then it's kind of nice. He kind of laid it all out for a lot of folks, especially the website store thing. I think that'll be a welcome change, especially if they keep the content from the old website, but
sure,
speed it up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why Paizo would stop selling PDFs of old books.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
why
yeah.
wouldn't you? I mean, it's there, it exists. It's not like we have to worry about the OGL stuff because it's not going to get revoked, so the books will still be valid. We don't have to put new licenses on them or anything. So, it's just people are still out there playing first edition Pathfinder.
Yeah.
So if they need more books, great, we got them. We got old adventures and everything.
Yeah.
And it costs. I mean, I don't say it doesn't cost us anything to sell them, but you have to pay for the storage space of the files and whatever. But like, basically, that's just profit.
Yeah, the cost of making another copy of a PDF is virtually zero.
Yeah.
So
Definitely. Yeah.
Well, good. Well, I'm up here on Camino Island this weekend. We have some family visiting, and so I'm in the secret refuge away from Bothell. So,
is this like a second guest bedroom?
No,
perhaps?
This is actually the main. This is my main. The main bedroom here, yeah. In fact, I think the cats are locked in with me as well. So I might have to get up and move them if they get too anxious at the door. But
John, I think you're locked in with them.
Yes,
I think that's how that goes.
Yeah, no, for sure. But this place has a nautical theme. I don't know if you can tell. It's got ship pictures everywhere. And if you're able to make it up next month for that end of the summer get together, you'll see we also have a lighthouse theme as well. So it's like it's a beach place. So it's just kind of
sure. Yeah, I mean, I'd love to make it up. So
very cool. So we talked about getting into some other stuff with that Ron guy, but he's not here now.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking maybe we should hold off on that stuff. He was pretty keen to talk about it.
Sure. Let's have Ron talk about the things Ron is excited to talk about.
But what are you thinking? Is there anything that you're wanting to get to?
Yes, I'm kind of excited about. I mean, I don't know. This past weekend was San Diego Comic-Con, and they revealed a whole bunch of stuff everywhere. And then I don't know if you know, like that there was this highly touted Strange New Worlds Lower Deck Star Trek crossover.
Right.
That the characters of a couple of characters of Lower Decks were going to appear in live action form on Strange New Worlds, right? And I was so excited because I love Lower Decks. I'm enjoying Strange New Worlds, and they were just like, you know what, here's like the normal episode of Strange New Worlds came out this week on like Thursday or whatever it is, right? And then on Saturday they were just like, here's the crossover episode. It was going to be next week, but they showed it early to Comic-Con, so they figured it was going to be on the internet, right? So blam, came out, watched it last night. It was great. It was fantastic, and it got me thinking a little bit. Also because I've been talking with Ryan on the Upshift podcast about crossovers between Transformers and G.I. Joe and Power Rangers and all that stuff. So I got me thinking about crossovers.
Okay.
And what you can do with Starfinder and have some form of crossover or another. The most obvious is a nice little crossover with Pathfinder.
Yeah.
Right. In the back of the core rulebook, we talk about what do you want to do to make Pathfinder characters in Starfinder, how to convert them, how to convert Pathfinder stuff into.
But it's Pathfinder First Edition. It's what was in the core rulebook. Yeah. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say there's the many permutations exist, right? Is it coming into second edition Pathfinder from Starfinder? Is it coming into Starfinder from second edition Pathfinder or
Hmm.
Starfinder?
Hmm.
Blah blah blah, right?
But
And there's lots of different ways to do it.
yeah, I think I agree. I think the obvious one right now with the two main flagships is, bringing either Starfinder into second edition or
Mm-hmm.
second edition into Starfinder. And what's interesting now, I wish we had Ron here, because he's been working on before he left Paizo, and since then, I don't know if I can say this.
Oh,
Yeah, this is a super
okay.
secret. He's
Maybe he's working on something super
been
secret.
working on for fun, not for publication or anything. He's been working on a
Sure.
crossover between these two systems that he entitled an updated version of one of the systems, and I won't say more than that until he gets here.
Okay.
But he's
Yeah.
really key, and a lot of folks have talked about, how can we incorporate
Right.
some of these things. But I think you're not talking about blending the systems as much as bringing characters from one to the other, though, right?
Yes, I think it'd be too difficult for you to sit down at a table, honestly, and have 3 Pathfinder Second Edition characters and 3 Starfinder characters, and have them play in their own
Right.
systems, but in the same fight or whatever, right? That would just be a mess. I think it would be a mess. It's, the reason why, like, in this, Lower Decks Strange New Worlds crossover, it wasn't animated figures in a 3D
Mhm.
environment, right? It was, they
Right.
became
Right.
the voice actors, for Boimler and Mariner were playing themselves, right? They were just they had on uniforms, they were there physically, right? And then there was a fun little Easter egg at the end of it that I don't want to spoil, which is great. But, have you seen
I
these
have
again? Are
not.
you
I have
watching
not.
Stranger
I have not.
Worlds?
I
Okay.
actually I have not watched either of them, in part because my wife is not a
Mm.
big Star Trek fan. So
Oh,
we
okay,
tend to
yeah.
watch things that she's more into. But now that you're talking about this crossover, I'm going to have to go back and watch. So
Sure, I mean, definitely. I think check it out. It's just good Star Trek, right? Star Trek Stranger Worlds this season has been a little, like, bonker
right,
like,
I've heard
they're just
that.
kinda
Yeah.
like, and they're gonna do a musical episode. They're, like, hitting all of the sort of, like, tropes. They're doing it in this sort of, episodic
Hmm.
way that like Discovery is, more sort of like
Right.
arcs, long story arcs, right? This is more just, they do this and they go to this planet and they do this and yeah. But it's been great, I think. And so if you're melding the two systems in some way or another, if you're transferring one to the other, it's like, I think actually using the advice that is in the back of the book, if you're taking second edition characters and, launching them forwards in time, and then running them in Starfinder with maybe some Starfinder. Maybe you've got two different groups, right? And you want to just
Hmm.
kind of like weave them together. There's a week when some people can't make it, so you just want to do a
Right.
little one shot where you weave the two worlds together, right? You can use the advice, I think, in the back of the book of Starfinder, a core rulebook, to take even your Pathfinder Second Edition characters and kind of make them, because you kind of can. I think you can quite easily kind of like devolve them to Pathfinder First Edition characters without doing any of the math actually, and then transferring
Right.
them over.
Right. Right.
You
Right.
still have fighters, you still have got wizards and whatever. So I think that's kind of like that's a given. Like, we've that information is out there,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
What doesn't exist is, of course, the other way around. Right. And that's the sort of also, it's going to be I mean, any conversion of a character between two systems is going to be tricky. And frankly, if you're doing it for just as a one shot to have fun, if you're the GM, sit down with your players and be like, this might not work because it's not official. And here we go. Right. They're not necessarily meant to blend together. But if you're taking Starfinder characters and then porting them over into uh, uh, Pathfinder, setting them back in
Hmm.
time,
Hmm.
which is basically the sort of, I see a cat.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
Stay away. Stay away.
which is kind of a little bit like what the Star Trek crossover was, like some little time travel, right? And so you take you got to, like, basically get to the core of the Starfinder class,
Right.
and then sort of build it back up from, from what it is now, in Pathfinder 2e game terms. And that's going to be basically like you figuring out, what kind of proficiencies is it going to have in things, armor and weapons and saving throws and that kind of thing. But because all those things are basically, they're the same general sort of thing in both games, right? You have weapons, you roll die, and
Right.
there's not like they're not so disparate. It's not converting like Vampire the Masquerade to Pathfinder Second
Right.
Edition, right? They're cousins. These two systems,
Yeah,
right?
I think there's a couple of interesting things though, because when you look at Starfinder, for example, there does exist archaic weapons and archaic armor,
Yeah,
which have some disadvantages versus more modern things. And so, if you
yeah,
bring a Starfinder character fully equipped into it,
hmm
I can see where, if it's a spellcaster, you can say, well, here's how the spells would work in that system. But if it's somebody that's using modern armor and weapons, then you have to figure out, okay, how do I make it so these things are not overpowered, right? Even
right,
at first level, because just
yeah,
the negatives you get because of things being archaic would make a first level Starfinder character way more powerful than a first level, maybe even a third level, say a soldier versus fighter.
right. Yeah, yeah. No, I mean that's the big question you have to ask. Is it? It might just be easier to kind of like ignore that archaic
Yeah.
term and then just kind of put everyone on the same level, essentially power wise, because you don't want but you don't want to have your Starfinder characters overshadowing the Pathfinder characters, even if for even if they have laser guns and
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Um, that's the tricky thing, and no, I haven't. I've only just sort of had this idea like last night and today. I haven't gone and sat down and like worked out the
Yeah.
math yet or anything along the lines, of course. So, take whatever I'm going to say here with a grain of salt. I'm just sort of riffing at the
As
moment,
we do all the time, by the way, for our audience.
as we do all the time. Sure, yeah, we don't plan these out ahead of time. We don't script these
Yeah.
out ahead of time. But I'm just saying, I'm just sort of like what to talk about. Like let's just sort of like go
Mm-hmm.
and think about like how you would do
Right.
a Starfinder soldier
Mm-hmm.
in Pathfinder Second Edition. That's kind of I think would probably be one of the easier ones
Yes.
to do, right?
Yes.
Because you could just simply, I mean, one way to do it, you could simply just say, well, just make this at we're playing third level. You're now a third level fighter, and just sort of pick some feats for them and whatever. You're gonna have to do some things, some custom made feats, maybe just to
Right.
just to make it feel like it's not just a
Mm-hmm.
fighter. Something, I'm trying to think of like something a soldier in Starfinder has that's pretty like archetypical.
Well, like a
But
blitz soldier,
all
blitz melee soldier, right?
sure,
So
yeah, okay,
I think that would be a fairly straightforward character to kind of bring in. Um, in terms of you'd have basic first level armor, you'd have some sort of melee weapon. Blitz soldier gets a bonus to initiative, gets a bonus to speed,
yeah,
um, has some proficiencies. I think a lot of those could be transferred over. Now, compared to a
yeah,
first level Pathfinder character, soldier, like you'd have to decide which rule. So you'd be going Pathfinder Second Edition rules at this point if you did this.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's if we this is the one way
Yeah,
to do
yeah.
it, but
So
yeah,
in terms of
right,
attacks of opportunity, movement, actions, you'd have to say, okay, you can do your thing, but it has to fit within this framework now. And this is how we're
sure,
adapting your abilities are pretty straightforward, I think, transfer across. But this is how we're adapting your feats or your gear boosts
yeah.
or any special things that you have, probably.
Yeah, special, playable species
Yeah.
kind of stuff that might exist,
Yeah.
right? You have to convert that into ancestry stuff too,
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm.
So there's a lot. I mean, we're talking about a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking
Yeah.
about the question of and it would be a bit of work, but it would be fun to as a sort of thought experiment to
Yeah, I
just
think so.
do and then see if they sat next to each other and actually had a were comparable in an encounter.
But they don't
Um,
have to be comparable. I'm thinking of, the old Star Trek episode where, Spock and Kirk go to like the Wild West or they go to modern USA. and McCoy's there doing the doctor stuff. They are so far advanced from that civilization. Granted, these characters are probably really high level too, though. Yeah,
they might be.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know when you're throwing them back in time. If it's the end of a high level campaign or what have you. Because if it's the end of a high level campaign and then you're going against big Pathfinder 2e monsters and wizards.
Yeah, I think that would be more interesting that way than low level, right? Because I think that's where it's harder. Where I think you'll see the differences, because the math in second edition is so tight that I think as you get to high level for both of them, I think that's when you would see a little bit more equality than versus really, really low level.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't want to go completely. I mean, I get what you're saying about like, what do you do with the big questions come down to like, what do you do with the weapons?
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
The technology in general, right? Do you do? I mean, one thing that you can do is. So when I was sort of thinking about this sort of thing, back a couple of years ago, a sort of it wasn't quite a mesh between the two. It was just sort of like trying to do a post-apocalyptic game.
Right. That makes sense.
In the Pathfinder Second Edition system. And what I did was to start with, like, so I did start. But weapons are going to be weapons, and a sharp stick on the end of a sharpened piece of metal on the end of a stick is a spear, and you could just use that same use the same dice for that. But a gun should be different. Like the way that the guns and gear stuff, and the guns and gear stuff was still, I think, in playtest at the time when I was doing this, is like these guns are they don't do more damage on average. I guess maybe on average they do a little more damage, but like they don't do a ton of damage like die wise, right? You don't see like there's a tiny flintlock pistol or a dueling pistol does D4 damage. And that's like a knife. The sword does more damage until you crit with it. Right. The crits are where the big thing is. But I wanted to ramp that up a little bit and be like, well, having guns in this sort of setting is going to be not common enough that but they should be more dangerous. So what I basically did was I just kind of I kind of doubled the dice. So like a pistol in this post-apocalyptic did 2d4 base, right? You don't have to have any runes on it. It does 2d4. And it has all the crit stuff, right? That regular guns do. But here's the thing. When your Starfinder people are transferred back in time, and whether they're high level or not, this might not matter as much. But they're not going to have access to power,
right? And ammunition. They're not probably
have access to and ammunition. Exactly. They're not going to be able to recharge their batteries. They're not going to be able to necessarily get bullets for their revolvers or whatever. So you could do something like that. Say, oh, you've got a laser pistol, and it instead of the D4 that it does in Starfinder, maybe it does 2d4 and fire in Pathfinder. But you got to really think about you really make people pay attention to their ammunition, their battery charges, right? Oh, you're not going to be able to recharge this on this one shot at any point, so you've got to conserve ammunition when the time is right.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the archaic stuff, right? So you're doing it, having it increase damage. I'm going to say if you look at the scaling of damage for small arms in Starfinder, right? It's 1d4 6 pretty much up till 5th level, right? And then you get 2d of that, maybe up to 7, and then 10 you get like 3d. So it's not like it's a huge amount of damage there. I actually don't think you need to increase that a lot if you allow the same crit rules that you have in second edition, because then that if you gave them this the same special crit effects that you would have for guns in Guns and Gears, right? I think they would be pretty substantial. But what you could do is say they penetrate better, so they have a higher chance to hit, maybe. So that's the trade-off you're looking at. So, okay, I only have so much ammunition, but man, I know that this laser or this slug is more likely to get through that hide than a spear or an arrow or something. But I'm only going to have so much limit to it. Now, how would I get around that if I'm a Starfinder guy? I'd be an engineer. with a lot of UPBs, and I'd be breaking down stuff into UPBs and, and then trying to make more ammo.
Yeah. That's
so
fair. That's fair. But we don't really talk about the process in which you can break something down into UPBs, unless you've got the feed
right,
or
exactly.
engineering specialty or a piece of gear with you that chews it up, right? Like, I don't think like you can just go into, at least, we maybe hand wave it when we're playing these games. Say, oh yeah, you break those down into UPBs because there's technology around that can do that. But like if you're thrown back in time, maybe you don't have that easy technology to take anything which you find in the past, a monster corpse, and then just sort of like crush that into UPBs because they're not. There was never made out of UPBs in the first place, I guess.
Right.
I don't know.
That's fair.
Like,
that's fair.
It's tricky. But that's how you couldn't like, oh, well, I'm an engineer and I would know how to rig something up. And maybe you could. Maybe it would be makeshift and you would get, some stuff out of it right away. The thing about the like archaic property is that it only really functions. It doesn't function the way you said. You would have to add another property, right, to do the thing that you said, which is against.
Right. I'm going the other way around. Right. Yeah. I'm talking about higher tech versus archaic armor versus archaic weapons versus high tech armor. I agree. Right.
Yeah, that's yeah. So you could do a thing and just be like, oh gosh, okay. So you come in with a laser pistol. That piece of gear now has the tech trait. Let's call it, right, or technology trait, and that means that against things that don't have the technology trait, it's +1 to hit or +2 to hit or
something like that.
Right?
Because think of as weapons advance, right? As guns advance, firearms advance. One of the things that happens with them is the accuracy increases. Right? You think of blunderbuss versus a typical sporting rifle, right? Just the advance in technology. Yeah, you can still get a lot of power. Black powder still have a lot of power there, but the accuracy increases, and so I think that would be something that would be reasonable. But I agree the not having a way to redo ammo. I remember I used to really be into post-apocalyptic settings and things. And one of my favorite books back in the day was called Lucifer's Hammer by Larry Niven and Jory Pornell. And it was in, post-apocalyptic US after a comet strike, right? Hits the planet, you lose power, you lose all kinds of stuff. And one of the kind of the prologues at the end was people were looking for these round metal things that they would cut and carve into arrowheads. And they could find them all over the place. And certain ones had sacred power because they were more penetrating versus the small brown ones. They didn't work as well, kind of thing. Or the medium size ones, So the idea being that, repurposing some old tech into something for archaic weapons, but made them more efficient then, So yes, I don't have bullets that I can keep firing, but maybe I can go reclaim those bullets, melt them down, and use them for something else. That kind of thing.
Yeah. That's true. There's some other questions to think about too. It's like in Starfinder, a monster, a giant. Initial. Why did I pick that? I can never pronounce it. Tashtari.
Okay.
Is a wolf. It's a 3-legged laser wolf, right? But it doesn't have archaic. Its claws still do things, do damage to people in a normal way. They don't necessarily have archaic on, and their armor isn't penetrated better by your laser beam. So what do you do with Pathfinder monsters in that sense? They don't technically have the technology trait at this point. Are your laser guns still doing more, better hits with that? You think?
I would say no. I mean, just kind of, what you mentioned there, because you can have the exact same. You can have the same creature in second edition and in Starfinder, and you wouldn't expect there would be a difference in, it's harder to hit in Starfinder than is to hit in Pathfinder with the same weapon, right? You have a dragon, so I have a dragon here. It's going to be equally hard to hit either way. So yeah, maybe for beasts they have a special creature trait that doesn't exist. I don't know. You have to look at the balance, I guess. I mean, it's looking at the ACs and the modifiers and things like that. Also, just in terms of knowledge, right? So if you think of somebody who's from the future, if they have a lot of high culture, they'll know a lot of things that would seem like a genius would know in an older culture. Think about developing a water wheel or some sort of putting together a electric generator, based on a water
Mm-hmm.
wheel, and or creating penicillin or whatever it is, kind of stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
I always found that interesting. When you see somebody who's coming from an advanced civilization and gets dropped into a ancient civilization, what can they? They have just a basic layperson's knowledge of things. All of a sudden, they can develop stuff that's way beyond what the tech could have been there. Except in Pathfinder, you have a lot of magical stuff and arcane things,
Yeah.
right? That maybe
Yeah.
would be kind of how that advanced knowledge came into being in the olden days. I don't know, but knowledge, I think, is another thing. How you would translate that back and forth.
Oh boy. Is this me? I wonder. Well, yeah. Sorry. You kind of cut out a little bit there. I don't know if that was okay. I think you're back. Um, yeah. I mean, one thing though is I think about like I don't know how to do that. Like, if you were to take me, and I'm not, I'm obviously not a genius or anything, and I don't necessarily know how the inner workings of computers. There's a certain amount of like depending on the character, obviously, right? You might have an engineer who knows all that stuff, right? But like you get a soldier, they're like, I have a laser gun and I pull the trigger and I know how that works, but I can't make one necessarily.
Right, right.
When given anything, or even how to fix it, right? But so and like you said, magic it can kind of do a lot of the. It's not like the same stuff, but like I think that's what happens in a lot of fantasy worlds when you think about it. Like, why don't they just why aren't they more
Mm-hmm.
advanced? Well, magic does some things, but they can't do everything, and it's not necessarily mass
Mm-hmm.
produced in a way. But nevertheless, there are people who know how to do things with magic and heal people, bring them back from the dead,
Right.
which you can do with advanced science as well, right?
Yeah, I
But
was actually thinking that, like even doing surgery, medicine. Um,
mhm.
I would think that in a fantasy world, even if you had some knowledge of medicine, it would have to be relatively rudimentary compared to somebody from a much more advanced civilization. Like even now, right? I'm guessing, basics of CPR, where the basic organs are, how things work. You've
Yeah.
seen enough MacGyver to know if somebody is choking, how to do tracheotomy in a pinch or
Well,
something like that.
yeah.
I mean, just the basic knowledge that maybe then people would know, but then they would just say, "Oh, we'll just get the healer and they take care of it." So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, but that being
Yeah,
said, like the medicine skill in Pathfinder Second Edition
it's really
does
strong. Yeah, yeah,
stuff. It's very
yeah.
strong. So what I think I would think about doing too is actually like this brings me to the next point is what do you do about stamina?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, if you look at the Pathfinder Second Edition game mastery guide, there is
Right.
a how to do
Mm-hmm.
stamina in your game, and that you can do that, but that has to be kind of like across the board. And if you're not already doing that in your Pathfinder game, it would be weird to suddenly say, "Well, now you have stamina, Pathfinder characters," right? But nevertheless, I think I would still maybe use that for the Starfinder characters, and then represent that. That would be representative of someone coming in and basically sort of being like, "Well, we have some more advanced medicine and can wave a tricorder around and be like, oh, now you're a little bit better." Although, how would should be able to do that to regular people too? So I don't know. Maybe you just have to tell your Starfinder players you don't have stamina anymore because you've been thrown back in time and that's done something to your bodies. But medicine works really well, and that kind of I don't know.
Yeah, or maybe so lower level stamina isn't it wouldn't be a huge difference. It still gives you a
Hmm.
big pool. I'm just thinking overall, maybe in the future you're healthier, right? You're not as affected or afflicted by things as much as readily, and so you're able to recoup more. But yeah, you might have to scale that. Maybe you say, well, because you're in an unfamiliar environment, maybe you only get half the stamina, to kind of make a little bit more equal pool. I'd have to look at the math. I haven't really thought back and forth across that part, but I think that's a good point. That's a good one.
It's just something that's just sort of for the immersion of the piece, or and what your Starfinder players are going to be used to, and what your Pathfinder players are also going to be used to, and not necessarily having it be just for the sake of if you're running it, for the sake of your own sanity, not having it be too different.
Right.
You don't have to worry about, oh, you're a Starfinder character and you're a Pathfinder character. So I might just sort of like even things out, and just for the sake of like, well, this is a game, right? We don't have to think about narratively about germ theory and
Yes.
and how to how your laser functions in the past when there's all this ambient magic around or something like that, and just be like, okay, but this is just, you're here, you have your gun works basically like this, and it may not seem as powerful, or may seem more powerful than it does in Starfinder. And again, it's just a matter of just sort of everyone going along for the ride, because that's what it'll be. It'll be kind of like it'll be like, not quick. You could do this for a couple sessions if you really wanted to, but it'll be a kind of one and done sort of thing. It's not like you're gonna be constantly mashing these together.
Well, I think what would be interesting though is what happens when, for the Starfinder characters, their tech runs out. How do they then pick up the skills, the feats, everything necessary to survive in the Pathfinder world? If you're a technomancer or something, how do you pick up new spells?
Right.
How does that progress?
Right.
Different.
Yeah. When you level
Yeah,
up,
I think that kind of stuff would be a really interesting thing for a long. If you did a long-term transport, so we're going, you're switching here. This is the transition,
right?
So we're gonna figure it out.
I think like if I was playing that Starfinder character, I'd be like, Jim, can I make like a culture roll real quick and make their cult? I want to. Do I remember hearing about Numeria? And they'd be like, we got to get to Numeria because they've got a spaceship there,
Yeah.
and at least they'll probably have like maybe some batteries or a generator that we can fix and get it working again, so that we can have our stuff and just kind of live in Numeria. But that could also be like you could take that as the seed for the campaign too. Like maybe their Numeria has the crash spaceship has a time portal in it, right? And that's how the people from Starfinder were messing around on the other end of the portal and get sucked back. I don't know. It's a lot of fun to think about. Like a lot of thinking about it also makes me sweat a little bit from the work that would be involved. Essentially.
Yeah, but I think if your players are on board with that and everybody's,
Sure,
willing to contribute, I think it would be fun for a short campaign. Not like a huge long thing, but say you're taking a break between sessions and say, you know what, we're going to go visit wherever, and your Starfinder character is going to be plopped there, and you're going to have to deal. And then as a GM, adjudicating the decisions they make based on what's happening at the time, because they don't even know, right? You don't have to tell them, right? You don't have to tell them immediately how it's going to translate. You just let them see, like you would in real life. You fire your boomstick at them. What happens? And how do they respond? Oh, I'm out of ammo. Right. What are you gonna do now?
What are you gonna do about it? Yeah.
Oh, that powered armor was great. Now it doesn't work. So.
And then, what you would do is then take all of the multi-class archetypes that exist for the regular classes, and then like, oh, you've been a technomancer this whole time, but now there's no more technomancer quote of feats for you to take, because there's no more technomancer spells. You got to start taking wizard spells.
Yeah.
And take wizard feats and wizard class feats, and basically, but now you're basically more or less a wizard, because they, since the archetype feats kind of replace the regular class feats, basically.
Yeah, no, I think that, now that I'm thinking about it, this actually sounds like a really fun homebrew to do. So.
Okay, well, if anyone out there decides to take the time to do that, let us know how it works.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, Jason, it's nice catching up with you, and without that Ron guy, just me and you again.
He's always talking.
He does, but I think it's just the lawyer thing, Yeah.
Fair. That's fair. And I'm always talking because it's just the I guess the actor thing in me.
Okay. I'm talking because I'm a teacher. It's the teacher thing in me. So
there you go. We're all in kind of talky kind of professions. Well, I'm not in that profession anymore. Neither is Ron in that one. But we've all had talky kind of professions, I guess.
Very good. Well, it's been great catching up with you again as we march ever closer that elusive 100 episodes. Six more months.
6 months. It seems like 12 more episodes doesn't seem like a lot, but if that, I guess that is 6 months. Unless we decide to do a marathon weekend.
No, we won't do that. No. But we might have some special episodes here and there, so you never know.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, I'm John.
And I'm Jason, and this has been Digital Divination.